Altitude is the second map I built for Prodeus. My first was called Transit. I managed to take third place in the second mapping competition, which I was pretty happy with. I'd read up on Doom mapping and really focused on giving it a continuous flow. It was a crescendo of combat, and then it was done. The two maps that came first, True Addiction by Twizzy and Thermal by Nebulant, both had really memorable set pieces towards their ends. When Prodeus came into beta and all the new levels became available, it was clear the best levels here also had super strong set pieces tied to a clear theme, such as the train bridge in Wretch or the snipers in Marksman. I knew for my next level, I wanted a sequence of memorable moments built around a clear theme. I settled on a dropship because the trains moving in transit usually got a good reaction, and I thought a more dynamic version of that would be really engaging. I set about designing a dropship where you could enter and exit from the sides or the rear, and with wings that curved above the rest of the body so they could be used as cover if the player was on top of the ship. I wanted to use the ship in as many different ways as possible to keep throwing new experiences at the player while sticking with the core theme. I started by creating a layout on paper that would allow a combination of riding in the dropship, running across the top of the dropship like it was a platform, and the dropship blowing something up to create a new route. Finally, I also wanted to incorporate a dogfight. I blocked the layout out in the Prodeus editor and scripted all the ship movements. The main flow through the level was complete, although I wasn't yet certain how each area would function. To set up the dogfight, I initially took inspiration from Rob Salmon's Truck Surfer 2. I had the dropship fly into a canyon and switched out the geometry for identical geometry with scrolling textures to make it appear as though you were still flying. At the same time, I increased the fog density so you couldn't see the ends of the canyon. This allowed me to spawn ships out of sight that could then fly to your location. The approach didn't work great with Prodeus's automap feature, as you could see you were stationary. This was fine for Truck Surfer 2, which was built around the gimmick, but it felt out of place in a more standard map. Jumping out the plane and fighting in the sky was fun though, so I adapted my approach. I deleted the canyon completely and embraced the way Prodeus renders most of the level most of the time by showing the player most of the level. I created a new final area for the ship to fly to that could be seen from where the player is first dropped off, and scripted a setup where planes would intercept you. Initially I had quite a few planes that would keep arriving with more troops. This wasn't particularly fun though, as you couldn't easily change height and lots of jumping was frustrating. I cut it down to 2 enemy ships which had multiple levels and blocked off the entrances to one, which forced the player to run across the top of their own ship to get between them. I needed a reason for the player to board the ships, as in early testing some players would snipe the enemies without ever leaving their own ship. Initially I had a force field strung between the enemy ships, but player feedback showed this didn't make a huge amount of sense. Why couldn't the ship just fly up? Around this time lasers were introduced into the game. I decided the laser function could double as an immobilization beam. I changed its colour to blue, created a new immobilization beam prefab, and had the enemy ship shoot them at the player's ship. This made more visual sense, had a bit of extra flair, and created a reason for the player to board each ship. The path of the plane meant the level flow was blocked out, but I didn't yet have gameplay defined for each plateau section. Initially I played with the idea of floating platforms, but that much geometry going up and down with a nav mesh on top of it led to odd behaviour. I wanted each area to be distinct so that there would be a sense of progression as the player travelled through them. After I got the areas playtested, it became apparent they were all a bit claustrophobic, and I ended up doubling the size of most of them. One of my favourite areas after the vent drop really suffered from this, and I ended up having to delete the whole area and recreating it with more verticality. I started releasing a new build of the map once a week and trying to focus on improving a plateau for each release. The Prodeus community were great at regularly playtesting all these changes and helping me iteratively polish the spaces, timings and encounters. Towards the end of development, I got a really interesting piece of feedback that the map played really well on normal difficulty, but really badly on ultra hard. I got in a call with a few of the players who played ultra hard, and by tweaking spawns, pickups, the number of hit scan enemies in certain areas, and adding more space around the second anti-air gun, I was able to rebalance it and make it a more enjoyable experience. These changes also made it more engaging on normal difficulty, as the player had more time and options to make decisions. After getting the map into what I thought was a pretty good shape, with lots of feedback from the community, one of the Prodeus developers, Jason Mahika, kindly took a look and gave me a few pointers. He suggested introducing the importance of the anti-air gun by having it shoot something down. I added a drone that flies overhead as you leave the starting area and scripted the anti-air gun to fire an immobilization laser first and a damage laser second to introduce the different laser types. The two shield generator rooms in the finale were originally mirrored. Jason suggested tweaking the layout of one to make the spaces more distinct. I added a much larger staircase loop to the second generator room and added lunges that would run from the low ground. This gives the player plenty of time to see them coming, so they can decide whether they want to face them head on, drop down a level and have them run back around, or retreat back through the entrance. It meant the two rooms played quite differently and there was a greater sense of progression. There were also a few tight spots he suggested opening up. On its release, Altitude received great ratings from the community and became the highest rated map. It was also added to the Prodeus staff pick list and came second in the official Prodeus Mapcore contest. I feel I achieved what I set out to do, which was to improve on transit by complementing the combat with a sequence of memorable moments built around a clear theme.